Brilliant. So, hello and welcome to this workshop. This workshop is presented by the Curious Marketing Club. So we've got quite a few members of the Curious Marketing Club here on this webinar. And for anybody that's not currently a member, the Curious Marketing Club is a virtual community and learning hub for people that want to learn more about marketing, how to do it, what to do, where to focus your efforts, with a real big focus on focus and accountability, because we acknowledge that when we have businesses to run, it's really easy for marketing to end up at the bottom of the pile, yet it is quite an important thing to do. So that's why the club exists, really, is to help you focus on the marketing side of things. So this workshop is free to attend. The recording will be available in the club for members. Claire is a member, so if you do have any ongoing questions and you want to talk to Claire about anything at all, then you can use that in the club. But if not, we can cover lots of things today and kick this off. So Claire, do you want to introduce yourself and talk us through what you're going to talk about?
Yes. Shall I get my presentation up first? Because otherwise I'm going to be worried about the technology working. So let me just press this button and, oh, I think you've disabled me from screen sharing. Does this mean I've got to make it up as I go along?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So you should, I have not disabled your screen sharing. You should be able to share your screens. So
it doesn't like me doing that.
All right. You are now the host.
Oh, power. Right, let's try this then. If we do a slideshow from the beginning. Does that work? Can you see that?
I can see that. It looks fantastic. And I've got the Q&A up, so if anybody wants to have a look at the Q&A, then you can do that. And let me just get the chat up as well. So just to confirm, if you have anything that you want to contribute or join or anything, then you've got the chat, and also any specific questions for Claire, please put them in the Q&A, and then we will get through those as much as possible. Brilliant. Over to you, Claire.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to Charlie for this invitation to chat about networking. I was first introduced to networking about 20 years ago, and it was portrayed to me as a resource that would solve all my business issues. At that particular time, I was looking for a career change, and I was told that if I went networking, I would meet people and I would get the job of my dreams. As it happens, I got the job of my dreams at that particular time due to a set of circumstances that was more like a comedy of errors. But as part of that job, which was a marketing director in a multi-service professional services firm, I saw the value of networking as part of our marketing mix. And it has been a big part of my professional life ever since, particularly when I moved to a new city, Nottingham, to the extent that I actually started my own networking business, and that I describe more like a business dating agency, because we're looking to help businesses or business people grow business relationships. However, to many people, networking is like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. So I hope that by the end of this presentation, I will have gone some way to helping you either find or get back your networking mojo. So what is networking? Well, here's a description from Wikipedia that I'm sure you can read. And talking about the benefits of networking, the fact that professionals use it to widen their circles of acquaintances, business owners network to develop relationships and companies that they want to do business with the future, and that professional networking platforms can be useful for professional people to engage, join groups, post blogs, and share information. So all that would make you think that networking is a recent phenomenon. But I have a theory, and it is only my opinion, that networking has been around for hundreds. No, let's make that a couple of 1,000 years. Cast your mind back to Roman times. People went to public baths to get clean, but also to meet friends, and in general to spend their spare time there. And large bathhouses had restaurants, games rooms, snack bars, and even libraries. These public baths were the most important places for socialisation of people from all different classes and backgrounds. So you can imagine that that would be where a lot of business would be done. Fast forward a couple of hundred years or a few hundred years to Georgian England, with the advent of coffee houses in the 17th century. Coffee houses became fashionable places for the chattering classes to meet, conduct business, gossip, exchange ideas, and debate the views of the day. Each coffee house would have a particular clientele, usually defined by occupation, interest or attitude, political affiliations, traders and merchants, poets and authors, and men of fashion and leisure. So really the precursor of the Costa and Starbucks of today. Many people say that their biggest worry they have about networking is not knowing what to say or how to start a conversation. And I would agree with you. I've been networking for over 20 years now, and I still get nervous when I enter a room for networking, wondering who's going to be there, what to say to them, all those kinds of queries that everybody, I think, feels. Many people will say that they're shy, so they don't want to go networking. One of the objectives of networking is to get people to like you. It's well known and well recognised that people do business with people that they like. So you need to be true to yourself. Don't try to be something that you're not. If you aren't normally the life and soul of the party, don't try and be something that you're not. Be authentic. Let me take you back to your university or college days and to your first Freshers' Week. What do you remember from that? To be fair, there is an argument that says if you can remember your Freshers' Week, it probably wasn't that good. However, think about that time. You probably entered the room, you were excited, full of optimism about meeting the people who were going to be your new friends and contacts for the next few years, people you were going to be living with in the same building, who you're going to be on the same course with, or you were in the same clubs or societies. And I'm sure that you will have started conversations asking people's names, where they'd come from, where they were studying, where they were living, what they were studying, all open-ended questions showing an interest in the people that you were speaking to, and you'd be waiting, listening to their answers and responding again. And I think that conversation is like a good game of, like a good tennis rally. Someone serves up a question or a statement that isn't meant to be an ace. You look to return it with an answer and another question, asking that person's opinion, potentially thinking that you're engaging in a doubles and bring in some other people, but you keep that conversational ball going backwards and forwards between you. So why is networking relevant to business marketing? Well, smart entrepreneurs network. They understand that networking is a key marketing strategy for business success and return on investment. But there's more to marketing than looking to just sell your products or services. So, for instance, job opportunities. That could be for you personally as you meet lots of people at networking events. Aim to be known as the expert in your field. Or if you're looking for a new role, you may meet the company that you would like to work with, and you could find out what their recruitment process is. Or if you've got a role that you're looking to fill within your own organisation, you may find the right person networking. Or you may hear something that's relevant for somebody that you know and is part of your own network. And that's important to build your own personal network. It's likely that if you've got a strong relationship with the people in your network, they'll follow you. If you change roles, you'll have built up a strong reputation where people are happy to recommend or refer you. And as part of the marketing mix, I think we all know the value of word of mouth recommendations. Networking can also offer lots of opportunities to collaborate. And this is an ideal way to try before you buy. The chance to work together, but without money needing to change hands. Maybe you can present a seminar or webinar together. If you have similar clients and you have complementary service offerings, this would be particularly useful to both parties. Networking can generate opportunities to create new opportunities and new business, but expect it to take time. Networking will endorse your own credibility, though, throughout that time. Business owners understand that networking is more about business relationship and building relationships than just money in your business account. Ultimately, that's where the investment comes from. And the key to that, building relationships, is, to be honest, I think that you do that in the same way that you build personal relationships. I mentioned earlier that I've modelled my business on a business dating agency, and I often compare networking to dating. You meet someone and you think that you'd like to see more of them and to grow a relationship with them. So in the same way that you would in a personal relationship, you work at that relationship, you work to get them to like you. You listen attentively, you maybe send them something to show that you've remembered something they've said. What I mean by that is a link to an article or a press cutting that was relevant to a conversation maybe that you had with them. Perhaps you might invite them to some corporate hospitality opportunity that relates to an interest they have. If you're working at a personal relationship, there may be times when you feel that you need to take things a little bit more slowly. You don't want to scare them off. And the same is true in a business relationship. My strongest advice is not to be too salesy. If we go back to the dating scenario, I remember someone saying to me about how they didn't like being sold to at networking events. This person said to me, "You don't drop your trousers on the first date." Now, many of you may know Adrian Peck, a presentation skills trainer. And I can remember him telling me that when he was doing some training for networking skills, he asked his audience who was there to sell. And he said that everybody there raised their hand. However, when he asked who was there to buy, nobody responded at all. And I think it's extremely rare to find somebody that you're actually going to do a deal with and sell something to at your first meeting at a networking event. Of course, don't rule it out, but let the person that you're talking to ask about your product or service and let them convince themselves that they need it rather than you pushing the point. So the other question is, where should you network? Well, as you can see in Nottingham, there are many networking groups and opportunities, and it is useful to ask yourself what you want to get out of your networking and who you want to meet. So look at the types of groups in your areas. Are there sector-specific groups that could be relevant to you? Do you want to be the only supplier in your field as you network? Pre-lockdown, there were so many networking opportunities that you needed never to eat at home again if you didn't want to. There were business breakfasts, business lunches, business dinners. So for me, what I thought that I would do is to choose the things that were of interest to me, that I wanted to attend. So whether that was an event with an interesting speaker, or a lovely restaurant that was holding a meal, or a really interesting kind of venue. Because if that appealed to me, it would be likely that there would be other people that would be there potentially for the same reason, who shared my views as well, and that it would just make it easier to chat. So here are some questions maybe to think about as you work out where you're going to do your networking. So what are the aims and ethos of the group? Some organisations are strictly referral passing organisations. Some have a broader aim of developing long-term relationships. Some have strict rules, others have none. Who attends the business networking group? Will they be the right contacts for you? What's the format and the rationale behind it? Some groups are literally a room full of people where you get left to take the initiative to introduce yourself. Others are more structured to facilitate interaction with other attendees, and it gives you airtime for you and your business. How many people are likely to attend? What time are the meetings and how often are they held? Regular meetings with the same people often allow for better development of relationships potentially. Is a regular commitment required? Often groups that require regular commitment engender a culture of commitment within the group. And that again helps to build solid relationships with other members. Is there a membership fee? Membership fees are no bad thing. It often helps to secure a longer term commitment from members. So if you've paid up front, then you're going to be more inclined to stick at it and make it work for you. Membership fees also go towards paying someone to do the marketing and running these groups. However, do ask what the membership fees pay for. What other costs are involved? It wouldn't be unusual to pay a membership fee and then an additional amount to cover the costs of refreshments and room hire. Is only one person per sector allowed to attend, or is it an open forum? Many smaller business networking clubs operate a policy of exclusively only allowing one person in per sector, effectively locking out the competition. So this can be a good way to get a group of people maintaining a sense of loyalty towards you. And so any referrals for that type of business will be passed your way. But if you find that you don't like there is the one person in the group who supplies X, then you may find it difficult to refer to them. And what level of commitment is required? Some groups operate strict levels of commitment. For example, weekly meetings with the necessity of passing referrals each week, whilst others are just simply turn up if you feel like it. Each has its own advantages and disadvantages. So my suggestion is not to limit yourself to just one group, but to mix it up a bit, as you'll see different people at different events. Given the current lockdown measures and the need to consider social distancing, I really don't think that networking will resume as we remember it for some time. So now is the time to embrace online networking. Most of the networking groups are diversifying, and at Katina we brought in online networking and worked to make that reflect our physical events as much as possible, and I think that others will do the same. So if you like to style offline, it is worth trying it online. If you aren't restricted to locally networking, i.e. that your services can be offered across regions, then do explore the opportunity of attending online events elsewhere in the country. My aim when I set up Katina was to connect business people across regions, and bizarrely lockdown has played into my hands slightly, as we've had people from Cheshire, Manchester, Leeds, as well as elsewhere in the East Midlands attend our online events, and actually the one that we're holding later this week, we've got one person attending from Denmark and another from Austria. So I've been thinking for some time now that there has to be more to networking than just doing the things you know you need to do. So that's things like preparing your sales pitch, wear your name badge in the right place, work the room, swap business cards, follow up. So if it were that easy, everyone would be doing it. And in my former life of professional services, I had many people say to me after an event, oh, it was no good. There wasn't the right kind of people there. I didn't know anyone. Yes, bizarrely, people said that to me. And they don't want to talk to a solicitor or an accountant. You'll have many networks in your life, and it's how you access them that will be of interest to you. We mentioned university a little while ago, and if you went to university, do you access all the alumni information that you can get? There will always be captains of industry, sports stars, TV personalities or experts, community leaders that will have attended the same university as you. And this is an exclusive network to you through your alumni. Look at how you can maximize that. Also, have a look at your clients. They're a great resource for you. Can they introduce you to others in their industry? Can you hold an event with one of your clients that will attract the people that you both want to meet? We spoke about collaboration earlier. Do you belong to an industry body? This again would be a good network. Conferences, exhibitions and trade shows are also good means of building a network within your industry. Are there businesses with complementary skills to the services that you offer? So now I'd like to move on and talk about emotional intelligence, something that I think really makes the difference when networking. I first became aware of the phrase emotional intelligence in around 2006 when I attended a sports seminar hosted by the PCA, the Professional Cricketers Association. I was familiar with the fact that psychologists could have a huge impact in sport, but this was the first time that I'd heard about emotional intelligence being highlighted amongst the players themselves, with the impact both on and off the field. Particularly relevant to this was the man management of an elite team of individuals, where each had a specific job to do, but collectively had an impact on the outcome of the game, and how engaging emotional intelligence could help the captain manage the outstanding mavericks and geniuses in the team. So forgive me if you aren't familiar with cricket, but in 2005, just to set the scene, as a country, England hadn't won against the Australians for about 20 years. This was momentous. It was a momentous time, and the whole country suddenly became aware that something historic which was happening. which could easily have distracted the players. But Michael Vaughan, the captain of the team, said that keeping emotions under control was a key element of the win. Simon Hughes, who was the cricket journalist for the Daily Telegraph at the time, wrote, "One of the prominent features of Vaughan's captaincy was his outstanding relationship with all the players. Many of them speak fondly of his care and handling of members of the team and of his preference for going around the dressing room having quiet words with individuals rather than giving strident speeches. There were factions within the dressing room and an array of quirky personalities, but they were all one under his captaincy." I've always been interested in the close proximity of business and sport and how both areas can learn and benefit from each other's best practices. So suddenly here was a new tool that sport was using that could be useful for business. It's easy to see how the man management elements could benefit business, but networking. I think that it may be likely that the networkers of old that I mentioned, those in the coffee shops and the Roman baths, would have reacted to the people that they were meeting sometimes as we do today, only on gut instinct. Whereas emotional intelligence is a self-management tool, you being aware of how you're feeling rather than responding with an immediate knee-jerk reaction. The phrase emotional intelligence was coined in the 1990s by Peter Salovey and John D. Mayer, describing it as a form of social intelligence that involves the ability to monitor one's own and others' feelings and emotions, to discriminate among them, and to use this information to guide one's thinking and action. Around about this time, there was also a group of researchers at Harvard University who were becoming concerned with how little traditional tests of cognitive intelligence told us about what it takes to be successful in life. The man who wrote the book Emotional Intelligence, Daniel Goleman, argued that it wasn't cognitive intelligence that guaranteed business success, but emotional intelligence. He described emotionally intelligent people as those with 4 characteristics. They were good at understanding their emotions, they were good at managing their emotions, they were empathetic to the emotional drives of other people, and they were good at handling other people's emotions. And as such, he identified the 5 main elements of emotional intelligence. So self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. Self-awareness is all about recognizing how you're feeling, understanding your own strengths and weaknesses, emotions and moods, and how these can impact on other people. A self-aware person is unlikely to be offended by criticism, but will take the opportunity to learn and adapt. With self-regulation, well, really that's thinking before you speak or do something. Rather than flying off the handle and being controlled by emotion, the emotionally intelligent person will control these impulses to immediately react. With motivation, well, these people are driven to set and achieve goals for the good of others rather than for themselves, following passion or vocation rather than doing something just for the money. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another by putting themselves in the other person's shoes to understand how they're feeling. And we use social skills to communicate and interact with each other, both verbally and non-verbally, through gestures, body language, and our own personal appearance. Emotionally intelligent people are good at reading all these signs. But can that help us with networking? Well, to me, networking is all about building relationships. So yes, I think emotional intelligence and networking are directly linked. If we take this as an illustration of a networking conversation, the speaker and the listener are both experiencing emotions before rational thinking kicks in. So consider a typical networking event. People attend for the purpose of making connections and building their business. Everyone who's there has chosen to be there and wants to make connections. So you're full of optimism. There's a room full of potential connections, clients, referrals, friends. But how do you feel at the end of that event? Did you accomplish what you set out to do? Did you make the connections that you needed to? Sometimes emotion can hijack the interactions you've made and determine your reaction to the event. You may have been disappointed that you didn't meet the person that you're hoping to. How many times have you been to an event and questioned the value of it to you? Maybe you didn't meet anyone new, or the person that you thought would be there wasn't, or the sector that you specialise in wasn't represented, which could make you think that the event wasn't worthwhile. But it is worth thinking again about that. If you've met people that you know at the event, that is useful in rekindling relationships or finding out if someone has a current issue you can assist with. Or indeed, if you have a good contact who's got connections in the industry you're targeting and would feel comfortable in introducing you. We spoke earlier about one of the key things to benefit from networking is to get people to like you. So it's worth looking at how people interact at networking events. And I mentioned being authentic and being yourself. So let's take a few elements. Self-regard is the ability to both like and have confidence in yourself. But with too little self-regard, your self-confidence will hold you back from making connections. Your emotion here is impacting the connection. On the other hand, too much self-regard could result in others avoiding contact with you because you're viewed as arrogant or self-centered. So their emotion is influencing the connection. How assertive are you? Assertiveness is the ability to put your needs, thoughts, and opinions into the world. With too little assertiveness, you miss the opportunity to clearly convey your message. But with too much, others may again avoid contact with you because you're viewed as aggressive or self-centered. Are you empathetic? Empathy is the ability and willingness to take note of other people's needs and feelings. With too little empathy, the conversation becomes one-sided, very I-centric, and the listener loses interest. So the listener blocks the speaker's message, which results in a failure to establish a meaningful connection. So you can see how that will impact your feeling about how successful an event has been. Being aware of these emotions, both yours and your listeners, impacts your social interactions and relationships, which will greatly improve your success in networking. I mentioned earlier that I often compare business relationships to personal relationships because the same skills and levels of emotional intelligence as you engage on, say, a first date would largely be the same at networking. So listening attentively, asking interested questions, keeping a conversation moving, not hogging the limelight, and deciding if you want to meet up again, for example, for a coffee, would indicate whether there's likely to be any mileage in that relationship. But of course, the beauty of a business relationship is that you can have more than one of those on the go at the same time. And from the relationships that you form, they can be beneficial to you in many ways. For anyone networking, there's always the potential that they may gain future employees or suppliers, potential collaborations, extending their industry contacts, and of course, the opportunity to refer to other connections within their own network. And this last opportunity, to me, this kind of networking is invaluable as it's a referral currency. You've helped someone or someone's helped you. Some feel that this is worth more than just a financial transaction and reflects the ability to look to help one another. Following up after an event can sometimes seem to be one of the hardest things to do, but by demonstrating that you're prepared to give a little before expecting a financial transaction from a potential client is a good way to nurture the relationship. Ways to do this could include sharing a news item relevant to their business with them, or if you read about them in an article, send it to them, offering congratulations on the coverage. I mentioned this earlier, and these could all be good examples of empathy. So if I had to sum up emotional intelligence and how to use it in a networking scenario, I would say, put yourself in the position of the person that you're talking to and act in the way that you would want someone to respond to you. Most people agree that people do business with people, and they do business with people that they like. So if you can establish common interests, whether in business or social, you've already started to build that bond. So if you get the person to like you, and they will almost look for a way to do business with you or refer you to one of their own contacts. And as a final thought, I came across this picture illustrating the 3 gates of speech, which advocates asking yourself before you speak, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? All good thoughts to have in both a business or social situation. But perhaps in networking, you could create your own gates relating to business. And I'd call these authenticity, delivery, and longevity, asking, am I authentic? And what I mean by that is being honest, open, and more relatable. It's a way of creating a more immediate connection with other people, and it encourages the person that you're speaking to be authentic too. Can I deliver what I say? Ask yourself whether you're being honest and transparent. When you say you'll do something, you actually mean what you say, that you're able to honour what you've promised. This, of course, makes for much better business connections and, of course, creates trust. So longevity, would you do business with me again? By asking this question whilst you're interacting with other business owners, you're helping to keep the encounter the most positive it can be. You're thinking about long-term relationships rather than short-term sales. Yet the long-term relationship can become even more productive and profitable by not just focusing on the here and now. By asking this question of yourself and the other person, you're keeping in mind how to make them feel comfortable and engaged, and at looking at ways of engaging and strengthening the relationship. So when I was preparing this presentation, I was conscious that there was a lot to talk about, and I was trying hard to keep to the main points, but I'm conscious that I may have missed some elements for some people. So this could be a good time to ask for some questions. I can't promise that I've got all the answers, but come on, Charlie, let's give it a go.
Love it. Thank you so much, Claire. That was brilliant. I really like your sort of 3 pillars of communication at the end, and your analogy of that. I thought that was really helpful. So yeah, brilliant. It's really interesting. So because I failed miserably with the chat, apologies for that. You've got the Q&A. So if anybody does have any questions for Claire or anything that you want to discuss, throw some ideas around, then use the Q&A. I will see if I can make the chat work, but if not, we'll just use it with the Q&A. And if nobody has any questions, then I will ask Claire some questions as well.
Don't make them too difficult.
Hey, love it. Okay, so Lady has commented, I find the idea of emotional intelligence being pertinent to networking. Do you have any personal experience of this?
All the time, and it is that putting yourself in the position of somebody else, and I think that can relate to, you know, the nerves of going into a networking environment. I think everybody feels that apprehension, if you like, walking into a room where you don't know anybody. How are you going to talk to them? And I think if you understand and feel that everybody else is going to be feeling that way, you can't say anything wrong. Or if you are, be authentic with it. I'll come up with it. Actually, Lady, I have got a good example of where I maybe didn't engage emotional intelligence, or perhaps I did because it just reflected me. So we had an event the other week online where an interior designer was attending, and I was suggesting that somebody else spoke to her. Now, you think about a virtual networking event, so Charlie's there in her office with a background, I've managed to hide mine. But I'm then saying to somebody, oh, I'd really like you to talk to this interior designer. And you're thinking, are they now thinking that I'm saying their room needs decorating or something like that? So I did have to fast track and explain why I thought that person might like to chat with them. And the reason for that was the interior designer would probably have a van, go out and about, do a lot of driving, and the person I wanted to introduce them to was a motoring lawyer. So I was able to pull it back that way, but I maybe hadn't engaged quite as well as I should have done. Does that answer your question?
This is where the chat, this is where the Q&A falls down a little bit. If I can add in a couple of bits in terms of emotional intelligence, when especially in in-person networking as well, is that, you know, read the room and have a look at how people are standing and interacting. If 2 people are having a conversation and they don't want to welcome somebody else into that conversation, naturally people generally have a closed way of talking. So if you see 2 people together, they're talking kind of very much face to face. If you have 2 people in a networking that are just you know, chewing the fat or just talking very generically, again, naturally they will have a more open approach. So they'll instead of being stood sort of face to face like that, they'd be stood sort of on the other way like this. So it's a little bit more welcoming. So if you're approaching an in-person networking event, you can go and then communicate with somebody, but choose the people wisely. If somebody's in a 3, again, like people will be there's a better way of explaining this. People will be more closed up and more open.
Yeah, and again, the poor person who's arrived on their own, a little bit nervous, you can tell that again from their body language. It is worth saying to them, you know, would you like to come and join us, or something, and just even, have you got a cup of tea? Do you want to come and grab a biscuit or something like that?
Yeah, don't try and barge in on somebody's kind of private conversation, because I think that's a bit of a marketing faux pas. So Bertie's asked as well, which is a great question. As a host, do you ever find yourself seeing networking faux pas, so to speak? And if so, how do you deal with them? As in, do you try to help or do you just leave them to it?
Oh, it depends on what it would be. Yes, if someone is trying to enter a group of users, as you've explained, that, you know, it is closed and somebody's hovering and trying to join a conversation, then yes, I view my role as a physical event host is almost like a sort of a business Stepford wife, if you like. I'm supposed to be the good host and make sure that everyone's got enough food and drink and talking to the right people and all that kind of stuff. So I would keep an eye out, and just if somebody is lurking and looks uncomfortable within a group or not quite within a group, then I might just go and either talk to them myself or ask them if they've spoken to somebody else or something like that. So yeah.
As a follow-on to that, which I think is quite interesting, what would you say your kind of top 5 networking faux pas based on what you've seen?
I would say I haven't seen any obvious faux pas, and if they are, maybe they're just people being authentic. I tend to think of certainly the events that we put on at Katina as being like parties, but with less music and less alcohol, but designed for groups where people can just chat and get to know each other. So there are no real rules at a party other than don't throw up, I would suggest. So I'm not being terribly helpful with that, but I like non-regimented, unrestricted networking. I guess the biggest faux pas for me is when people want to sell, and when they want to thrust pamphlets in your face or brochures, or they're bringing product, and it's less sharing but very much more promotional sales. That's to me is the biggest faux pas, because to me networking is trying to get to know people, and if you went to a party, you wouldn't be saying, you know, here, try my food, it's so much better, or something like that. I think that's the only faux pas I can really relate to.
Brilliant. Okay, so next question from Simon. So he's asked, what is the best system for following up, as in the actual mechanics, software, time frame?
Again, be yourself. If you have got a full day after the day that you've been networking, but there is someone really key that you want to follow up with, but you haven't really got time to send an email, is it okay to send a text and say, you know, it was so great to meet you yesterday. I'm sorry, I'm not in the office today. But I'm going to ask my secretary to drop you a line and see if we can meet up, or some way. So if there's a way of delegating it, but telling the person that you're delegating it, that might work. Maybe a quick phone call to say, you know, great to meet you, but I'm going to be on holiday next week. Just wondered if we might be able to get a date in the diary for when I get back, or something like that. It's got to be you being true to yourself, and also relate back to the conversation that you had with them. If it was very loose, let's meet up for a coffee sometime, then you've got a little bit of leeway in that follow-up. If it was, wow, that sounds really interesting, let's get together and talk about it, then I think you've got a bit more urgency and a need to follow up sooner. And whether you do that by phone, email, letter, carrier pigeon, whatever, that's you being you and how you would do your business.
I'm going to advocate additional software on that is LinkedIn, like literally without.
Yeah, true.
Using LinkedIn to enhance your networking experience, whether it's in person or online, will just help you out so much, because the other benefit as well is if you meet somebody at a networking event and you didn't want to spend that time actually having a conversation on the phone, a Zoom call or something like that, because there wasn't the need for it, you can keep in touch with that person, and that they can then keep in touch with you via your content. You can keep in touch with them via their content and different things like that. So LinkedIn is such an incredible tool for networking, also in the fact that you can connect with people before the physical event or before the online event. So Claire organises the online, they call Connect meetings.
Katina Connect Plus. Now.
Yes, Katina Connect Plus. So they're online meetings, and then Claire sends out a list with who's going to be at that meeting. You can then go to LinkedIn and connect with those people you want to meet before the meeting, and it just helps with that rapport. And then you've got a platform that you can follow up with people afterwards. But then, as Claire was saying, you've got phone, email, carrier pigeon as well. Lots of different ways of doing that. And Simon, in response to your further question saying nobody wants to see you being yourself, that is completely, everybody wants to see you being yourself, because, you know, you're attracting people that get you and that, you know, want to work.
If they don't get you, you probably don't want to do business with them anyway.
Yeah.
Or they may not want to do business with you. It's, I guess, you know, you're going to have your ideal clients, and then if there's that 80-20, isn't there, about the clients and customers that you have and the ones that you spend a lot of time on. So yeah, it's choosing the ones that you want, really.
Brilliant. So great question from Reem, who said, hi Claire, how do you foresee networking adapting or changing in light of the current situation, or do you think we'll be back to doing face-to-face networking soon?
I don't think it's going to be soon. I read something today that somebody thought it might be in October. I think the days of the larger networking events, they probably won't happen until next year, I would think. I think smaller events of 10 or a dozen or so might work. I've seen a number of sports businesses talking about how they're preparing for potential corporate hospitality. I was just chatting with somebody about this earlier today. I think it's all dependent on the R value. If there's going to be another spike in the virus, if they can get track and trace, if they can get a vaccine. For the moment, I would say online is your best way. It really maximizes your time. You don't need to travel anywhere. It's calorie free. You don't have to have biscuits at it unless you want to bring your own. And this, to my mind, gives you the opportunity maybe to meet people that you wouldn't have done before. And you and I, Charlie, were chatting earlier today about this, that the online networking, perhaps if you are a bit nervous of networking, does give you that sort of chance to try something, but without the fear of actually going into the main room and you being the one that's standing there on your own. You're not going to get that on online.
I was part of a panel discussion with some other kind of B2B marketers from all sorts of different areas of the business. And the one thing that came from that, which is what you're saying about try it if you're anxious when you go into an in-person networking event, was that there seems to have been a real shift. So in a networking meeting, or even just a meeting in the office, usually the extroverts of the room end up dominating the conversation and end up speaking, whether it doesn't matter what event you're at. Whereas there seems to be a big shift going on. Whereas for online events, a lot of people that are more introverted and less likely to speak up in person are having the chance to be heard and be seen, because it's seen as there are less barriers to entry when doing it online, and it seems a little bit less daunting. I feel like I should have a poll here to ask everybody, really, how do you feel about online networking versus in-person networking? Do you find it easier to communicate with people, or do you find it harder? Feel free to, because I can't run the poll at the moment, I will see if I can. Feel free to put it in the Q&A what your preference is, because it'd be interesting to know.
It's an interesting point you raise there, because I just as lockdown started, we were due to have an event with a speaker who was going to be one of the last people to have climbed Everest, and he was going to do a presentation about this. And I said, we could do it online if you like. And he said, no, I'm much better with a live audience. So exactly as you've said, maybe that more outgoing, gregarious kind of person that feels they need to move around the room and wave their arms around and gesticulate and interact with the audience. So online doesn't work for them. So if you're slightly more restrained, little bit quieter, then this could be your networking. And I think online will always be there now. So we're at Catena making this part of our event portfolio. We will always do online networking now anyway.
Brilliant. That was going to be my next question, which is, how are you finding it, and will you continue doing it once we go back to in person? So that's brilliant. Okay, questions. So Michael has asked, my overwhelming experience of networking is that everybody's there to sell and nobody to buy. Until networkers are better educated, conversations seem quite one-sided. When you come across someone who needs what I do, just send them along, right? In your network hosting, do you educate people along the lines of forming collaborative internet interest groups to be at the right place at the right time to provide what a prospect needs at that group?
That's something that was one of the raison d'etres, if you like, of me putting Catena together as a business dating agency. It was connecting the right people, or what I perceived to be the right people, together to do stuff that they wanted to do. So within the network itself, we've got broken down into smaller network sector champions. So people who work within a sector or have an interest in that sector, they have that opportunity to engage with each other. We're now looking at bringing those opportunities online for those groups and the sort of the sector leaders within that as well. But there have been some examples of members within Catena who I've just put together, who've done a seminar together, 3 different disparate industries, but coming together on one. So I think one was the motoring lawyer, who I spoke about earlier, one was an HR manager, and one was a resilience coach. So they were talking about how anger management can affect employees. And if you've got employees that drive a lot, hence the motoring lawyer, the impact that. So it was sort of dealing with anger within the workplace from an HR perspective, an emotional resilience perspective, and a legal perspective. So you'd never have thought of putting those 3 together, but they got together and did a seminar which was very well received.
That's amazing. That reminds me of a great book that I want to recommend to everybody. It's one that I read years and years ago, and it's called How to Be a Power Connector. At the moment, you're going to have to put that one into Amazon or Google, because I can't remember the author's name, but it is an excellent book, and it talks about, instead of trying to get to know loads and loads of different people to be able to put yourself in front of them, it's identify, who can you connect together, because if you connect other people together to help them, they're going to remember you in a much more meaningful way. That, and the fact that networking is not always about who you know, it's who the people that you know knows, if that it's always one of those that I would struggle to say, but it's understanding, how can you expand your network and get in front of a wider audience. If you go straight in with a sales pitch, you're going to put that person off. If they know you, if they get to know who you are, they're much more likely to then make those introductions, to talk about you when you're not there, and to sort of facilitate those other conversations.
Who you know and how you know them, I think is particularly useful, and that's where I made reference to that referral currency. You know, you send something to somebody and sort of the opportunity for a job or something else to come back.
Michael, in answer to your question, what you're saying, I think that's where what Claire said in her presentation, all about understanding what networks that you can join that will give you what you need. So, you know, if you're going to lots of networking events where people gather in the room, it's the same people every week, every month, and you're not getting anything from it, have a look at networks, you know, like Katena, that can facilitate those introductions to the people that you want to get in front of. And then also ask the people that are responsible for those memberships, because I know that especially Chamber of Commerce's, like depending on which you're a member of, don't just be a member, sit back and wait for them to give you all the information that you need. Actually proactively go and talk to your account manager or the, you know, the person responsible for that network, and talk to them about, you know, how do you get in front of your target market, which I know that's kind of why I wanted to invite Claire here, because that's what she does really, really well. You know, if I go to Claire and say, right, okay, I really want to get in front of a motoring lawyer, Claire would be like, right, I know exactly who you
One
need
of them.
you know, and it's really, really good. So yeah, I think that there is value in doing your homework about which networks that you want to be part of.
Absolutely. If there is a specific person that you want to meet, and whilst this may sound a bit stalkerish, and I don't mean it to at all, but follow their social media, or LinkedIn or something like that, and see which events they go to, or they post about where they're going or what they do, or trade stuff or something like that. Because if you see that somebody is attending an event, you can just drop them a line and say, actually, I'm going to be there, just wondered if we could have 5 minutes, you know, I wouldn't mind running a question past you, or something like that. It would take a bit of guts, but it's definitely worth doing.
So a couple of people who are very good at Googling. So the author of that book I've just recommended is Judy Robinett, R-O-B-I-N-E-T-T. It's an oldie. I do like quite a lot of the sort of older marketing networking books, but it's really, really good. And also from a personal experience point of view, I think that was one of my most successful kind of routes to growing my career, which was just connecting other people in the industry and being seen as that connector. It was a great way for me to then grow my influence in that industry and become known. And to be honest, I did it by accident. I didn't really realize what I was doing because I was just trying to be helpful. So I was just like, oh, I know that person, or I know this person, and I can connect people together. So, you know, if you're in an industry and you know that industry very well, you know, set yourself up to be that power connector and start, you know, matchmaking people up, because it will really help you. Right, I'm just getting through some of the questions. So Morag's asked, what sort of frequency of attending events would you recommend? I think that's a great question.
Yeah, again, whatever suits you. You know, when I mentioned the events pre-lockdown, you know, you could never eat at home. You could go all the time to networking events, which is great. However, you need to sort of also build some time in to actually work on your business and do the work that you need to do. So I would say do it according to the time that you have, and also to your own personal preference. There are some people who are really good morning people, and so will go to a business breakfast. I'm terrible in the morning, so don't ever ask me to a business breakfast event. You won't want me there, and I won't want to be there, apologies. But sort of lunchtime and later in the day, I'm quite good, but I'm conscious that pre-lockdown, you know, afternoon events or lunchtime events weren't good for people who'd have to leave and go and do the school run or something like that. So you're always going to get different people who do different kinds of events, and it has to suit you, and your own requirements, that being time as well. I'd say if you could do at least one thing a week, then that's only 4 commitments that you need to make, usually a month. If you can now sort of build in online networking, that might take a little less time, or it might actually take you a bit more time, depending on the amount of work that you're needing to do and lockdown is presenting to you.
I think on that, it also depends on your audience too. So who do you want to network with? There was, like, I went to some events back when I was in the laser scanning space where they happened once every 4 years. So, you know, that's where I started to realize the power of LinkedIn, because you can keep in touch with people much more frequently and indirectly than, you know, waiting every year or every 4 years for a particular event to come by. So especially if you're in a market that doesn't get together on a weekly or a monthly basis, understand how often do they get together? Does that suit your business need? And is there another way that you can keep in touch with them? Emma's commented saying that a method of communication that she uses is Twitter. So she's tweeted event attendees in advance, got chatting to them beforehand, and make it a lot easier to then chat to people at the event. So, you know, LinkedIn and Twitter, you know, you can use other means of communication if you choose, but especially in a B2B environment, Twitter and LinkedIn are really, really good platforms.
Yeah, it's establishing that credibility with someone that you know them, or you've got something in common. It just gives you something to start talking about.
So Michael's asked, does Catena have something to do with the chain and your interpretation?
Yes. It's, as you probably know, Latin for chain or link, and it is that linking and creating a chain effect. So that was it, where I was looking for a name, and you'll see from my logo, it was the C for Claire and C for Catena sort of linking, and it was the nearest I was ever going to get to a Chanel logo.
Love it. There you go. Inject your personality into what it is that you're doing. And yeah, on that note, so with the Curious Marketing Club, I'm rebranding that at the moment. So I'm working with a brand specialist to create a new logo and brand identity for it. And if anybody knows me, I'm a bit of an obsessive Alice in Wonderland fan, which is kind of where the whole curiosity thing originated. And yes, there will be a key that will be incorporated into my new branding, as well as mountains, because you talked about Everest. I've never summited Everest, but I did go to base camp and talk about mountain climbing quite a lot. So yeah, if you can formulate what a key and a mountain have in common, then it'll give you an idea into what the branding will look like. So we are at the end of the session. Has anybody got any burning questions that you want to ask before we part ways? Just quickly as well. Oh, quick question from Lady. Do you think there are stages from meeting somebody for the first time at a networking meeting and then becoming a client?
Yeah, and I would liken this again to dating. There are steps that you go through in the dating process before you get to, let's say, marriage is the ultimate goal in potentially what you were looking for, or it may be something else. But there are steps that you go to, and it may be that you meet for coffee first, and then maybe you go to the cinema, maybe you then go out to dinner. Meeting the parents is a key step in that sort of direction, isn't it? So I think that there will be, depending on the client that you're looking for and the service that you are offering, there will be many steps along that way until you finally clinch that deal. Sometimes it may be the love at first sight. Other times you may need to work at it a bit longer, or it may be a long, slow burn. But if you're investing in that relationship and your instinct and your emotional intelligence is telling you that it is worth you continuing to invest your time and effort and energy in that, and that you feel that there is something coming back that makes that relevant, then it is worthwhile.
Brilliant. And to end, there's just a couple of observations. So Neil said that always have a story to tell, because people remember stories and not generally what else you've talked about, which is a really, really good point. And then Keith has said an observation that we all know that successful networking comes from being interested in other people and building relationships. 100%. I used to train people in networking at the Institute of Directors, and used to ask people to sell through the room rather than to the room. That is a great tip. I like that.
Absolutely.
And ask people for help in identifying who you might be able to also help. So people are less concerned if they know they're not your sales target. That is great advice.
Yeah. I'm
going to pick that out and share it as well. Thank you for sharing that, Keith, and Neil as well. So thank you so much, Claire, for coming. And
oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm honoured to be asked. Thank you.
This is brilliant. So this workshop recording will be available to members of the Curious Marketing Club. If you're not currently a member and are interested in learning more, you can head to charliewyman.com/club, or if you'd like to talk to me about it, then please send me an email, let me know. Again, thank you, Claire, it's been great, and I hope to see everybody again soon. Ciao for now. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.